Confused and anxious, Obinna sought advice from one of the village elders, a wise man named Namdi, who had seen many seasons of life. Obinna explained his dilemma, and Namdi listened patiently, nodding thoughtfully. When Obinna finished, Namdi spoke. Love is not just about admiration or attraction. It is about who you can walk through life with, even in silence. Sometimes the quiet ones carry the deepest strength. Obinna thanked the elder, his words echoing the message he had received from the spirits. Still, the question remained. Could he trust his heart enough to make his choice? Obinna decided to meet Deborah the scholar again, hoping to gain more clarity. This time, they talked about life beyond the village. She told him about her dreams of visiting faraway lands and studying under great teachers. As she spoke, her eyes lit up with excitement. Then, unexpectedly, she turned to him and said, Obinna, you're a man of wisdom. Why don't we travel together and learn from the world? We could build a future based on knowledge and growth. Her proposal was tempting. He had always admired her intellect, and the idea of traveling intrigued him. But was it the life he truly wanted? After his conversation with the scholar, Obinna felt more confused than ever. Each Deborah offered a different path in life. The musician offered passion. The scholar offered growth. The dancer offered excitement. The cook offered warmth. The merchant offered wit. And the healer offered peace. He stood at a crossroads, unsure which path to take. His heart leaned toward the healer, but the voices of doubt were still loud in his mind. A week later, Deborah the dancer invited Obinna to join her for a celebration in a nearby village. She was performing at a festival, and she wanted him to be there to support her. Obinna agreed, hoping the time away from the village might give him a new perspective. When they arrived at the festival, the energy was electric. Deborah danced with all the grace and beauty he had come to admire, and the crowd was captivated. Afterward, she took his hand and led him through the bustling streets, laughing and enjoying the festivities. But as much as he enjoyed the evening, he couldn't shake the feeling that his heart was elsewhere. As Obinna reflected on his time with each Deborah, he began to realize that love wasn't just about passion or intellect or shared interests. It was about who could walk with him through life's challenges and joys, who could support him when times were tough, and who could be his partner in both the quiet moments and the celebrations. The answer became clearer with each passing day. He needed someone whose soul resonated with his. One evening, Obinna sat by the river, thinking about the healer. He remembered the way she had cared for him when he was feeling lost, how she always listened without judgment, and how her presence brought him peace. As he watched the sun set over the water, he felt a sense of calm wash over him. The answer had been in front of him, all along. It wasn't about the excitement of the dancer, the intellect of the scholar, or the charm of the merchant. It was about the quiet, steady love of the healer. She was the one who made him feel whole. The next day, Obinna went to see Deborah the healer. He found her in her garden, tending to her plants as usual. When she saw him, she smiled, and the sight of her brought a wave of warmth to his heart. He sat beside her, and after a long moment of silence, he spoke. Deborah, I've spent time with each of you, and I've learned a lot. But in the end, my heart keeps bringing me back to you. You're the one I feel at peace with. You're the one I want to build a life with. Her eyes softened, and she placed her hand on his. I felt it too, she whispered. The village buzzed with excitement when news of Obinna's decision spread. Many had speculated about which Deborah he would choose, but most were not surprised when they heard it was the healer. Her gentle nature and quiet strength had always made her stand out in subtle ways. The elders gave their blessing, and preparations for the wedding began. As Obinna walked through the village, he felt lighter, more certain than ever before. He had found his Deborah. As happy as Obinna was with his decision, he knew he had a difficult task ahead of him. He had to inform the other Deborahs that he had chosen the healer. It was a conversation he dreaded. Each of the women had shared their time, hearts and dreams with him, and he didn't want to hurt them. He decided to speak to them one by one, starting with Deborah the scholar. Obinna met Deborah the scholar at her home. They sat beneath the shade of a large tree, and he hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I've come to a decision, Deborah. You are brilliant and knowledgeable, but my heart has chosen another." The scholar nodded, her eyes calm but distant. "I understand, Obinna. I had a feeling you would choose the healer. She has a quiet power that is hard to resist." Though there was sadness in her voice, she smiled graciously. "I hope you find happiness with her." Her maturity and grace touched Obinna deeply, and he left her home with a lighter heart. Next, Obinna visited Deborah the merchant. He found her tending to her shop in the market. When he told her of his choice, she paused for a moment, then burst into laughter. "Well, I can't say I'm surprised. You've always been the thoughtful type, and I knew someone as practical as me wasn't your match." Despite her carefree attitude, Obinna could see a flicker of disappointment in her eyes. "I wish you well, Obinna. You and the healer will make a fine pair." She gave him a playful wink and waved him off, her charm intact despite the news. Deborah the dancer took the news harder than the others. When Obinna told her of his decision, her face fell and tears welled up in her eyes. "I thought we had something special," she said softly, her voice trembling. "We do," Obinna replied gently. "But my heart is with the healer. I can't explain it. It's something beyond words." The dancer wiped her eyes and nodded, though it was clear she was deeply hurt. "I hope she makes you as happy as I would have." Obinna's heart ached as he left, knowing he had caused her pain. Deborah the musician welcomed Obinna into her home with her usual bright smile. When he told her of his decision, she sighed but remained composed. "I always knew your heart leaned toward her," she said, strumming her lute gently. "You two have a special connection. I'm just glad I could share my music with you." She played a soft melody, her way of saying goodbye. As Obinna listened, he realized how grateful he was for the time they had shared, even though their paths had not aligned. Finally, Obinna went to see Deborah the cook. She greeted him warmly, as always, offering him a seat and a freshly prepared meal. When he told her of his decision, she smiled and nodded knowingly. "I've seen the way you look at her, Obinna," she said with a chuckle. "You made the right choice. The healer is a good woman, and I think you'll have a peaceful, happy life together." Her acceptance was comforting, and they shared one last meal together as friends before he left. With the difficult conversations behind him, Obinna and Deborah, the healer, began preparing for their wedding. The entire village was eager to help, as weddings were a joyous occasion for everyone. The women of the village came together to sew Deborah's dress, while the men worked on building a new home for the couple. The air buzzed with excitement, and Obinna found himself smiling more often as the day of the wedding drew near. In keeping with tradition, Obinna and Deborah visited the village's sacred grove to seek the blessing of their ancestors. They knelt before the ancient stone altar, surrounded by towering trees, and offered prayers for a long and prosperous marriage. As they stood hand in hand, a soft breeze rustled through the leaves, and Obinna felt a deep sense of peace. The ancestors had heard their prayers, and he felt their presence guiding him toward his new life. After the ceremony, the entire village gathered for a grand feast. The tables were laden with the food, and laughter filled the air. Deborah the cook had prepared a special dish for the couple, while the musician played a joyful tune in the background. Even the other Deborahs, though bittersweet, attended the celebration, wishing Obinna and the healer well. The night was filled with dancing, singing, and joy, a true celebration of love and unity. After the feast, Obinna and Deborah retired to their new home, a beautiful house built by the village in the heart of the community. It was simple, but perfect for the life they envisioned together. As they crossed the threshold, hand in hand, Obinna felt a deep sense of contentment. This was the start of their new life. A life they would build together with love, patience, and understanding. In the weeks following the wedding, Obinna and Deborah settled into their life as a married couple. They worked together in the fields, tended the garden, and cared for their home. Obinna marveled at how easy it was to live with Deborah. There was a harmony between them that made even the simplest tasks feel fulfilling. He realized that their bond wasn't just built on love, but on mutual respect and shared values. Obinna and Deborah's first challenge came unexpectedly. A drought struck the village, and the once lush fields began to wither. The crops, which provided sustenance for the entire community, began to fail. Fear and worry spread among the villagers, and Obinna felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. As a married man now, he had more than just himself to care for. But as always, Deborah's calm presence reassured him. "We will get through this," she said, her voice steady. "We just need to work together." Obinna and Deborah's first challenge came unexpectedly. A drought struck the village, and the once lush fields began to wither. The crops, which provided sustenance for the entire community, began to fail. Fear and worry spread among the villagers, and Obinna felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. As a married man now, he had more than just himself to care for. But as always, Deborah's calm presence reassured him. "We will get through this," she said, her voice steady. "We just need to work together." Deborah took it upon herself to help the village during the drought. She began brewing special herbal teas from the plants in her garden, which helped to keep people hydrated and healthy despite the dry conditions. She also worked with the elders to find new ways to conserve water. Her wisdom and resourcefulness impressed not only Obinna, but the entire community. "You have married a remarkable woman," one of the village elders said to Obinna. He nodded in agreement, feeling proud and grateful for her strength. Obinna and Deborah worked side by side, finding ways to keep their small garden alive despite the lack of rain. They dug deeper wells, collected dew in the early mornings, and used every bit of water sparingly. The work was hard, and there were days when Obinna felt overwhelmed, but Deborah never complained. Her determination and optimism never wavered, and her resilience gave Obinna the strength to push through. As the drought dragged on, the village faced many hardships. Some families left searching for greener lands, while others fell into despair. But through it all, Obinna and Deborah remained united. They leaned on each other for support, finding comfort in their shared struggles. On quiet nights, when the village was still and the stars filled the sky, they would sit together outside their home, talking about their hopes for the future. These moments of connection, I reminded them that they could face any challenge as long as they had each other. Months later, just when it seemed like the drought would never end, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. The air was thick with anticipation as the villagers watched the sky, praying for rain. Finally, the heavens opened and rain poured down on the dry earth. Joy and relief swept through the village as people danced in the streets, their worries washed away by the life-giving water. Obinna and Deborah stood together, drenched but smiling, knowing that they had weathered the storm together. With the rain came new life. The crops began to grow again, and the village returned to its former vibrancy. But it wasn't just the fields that flourished. Deborah came to Obinna one evening with a soft smile and whispered, "I have news, my love. I'm carrying our first child." Obinna's heart swelled with joy. The drought had tested them, but now they were being blessed with the greatest gift of all, a family. Obinna and Deborah began preparing for the arrival of their child with great excitement. Deborah's skills as a healer made her well prepared for motherhood. But Obinna worried about, "Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on your notification bell and stay tuned for episode 3.